What happens when a simple question from Whoopi Goldberg turns an entire studio silent? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. Whoopi Goldberg leaned back in her chair and smiled as the audience settled after the commercial break. Welcome back. We're sitting here with Keanu Reeves today. The audience erupted into applause. Keanu smiled and waved modestly. Thank you. Thank you. Sunny Hostin laughed. See, this is what happens every time Keanu walks into a room. People lose their minds. The audience laughed and cheered again. Keanu shook his head. I don't know about that. Oh, come on. Joy Behar jumped in. You know exactly what happens. More laughter followed. The conversation started comfortably. The hosts discussed Keanu's latest project, his years in Hollywood, and the public's fascination with his reputation as one of the nicest celebrities in the business. Alyssa Farah Griffin smiled. Do you ever get tired of hearing that? Every interview says you're the nicest guy in Hollywood. Keanu chuckled. I think people are kind to me. Maybe that's what they're seeing. The audience applauded lightly. Whoopi nodded. That's a very Keanu answer. The discussion moved naturally from movies to fame. Sunny leaned forward. I've always wondered something. You've been famous for decades now. Social media wasn't around when you started. Now everything gets analyzed. Every photo, every expression, every interaction. Yeah, Keanu replied. Things move a little faster now. A little, Joy interrupted. The audience laughed. A lot faster. Keanu smiled. Fair point. Sunny continued. How do you handle people constantly creating stories about you? Keanu thought for a second. I try not to chase every story. People are going to think what they think. If I know who I am, that's usually enough. The audience responded with applause. Whoopi nodded thoughtfully. That's harder than it sounds. It is, Keanu agreed. The conversation remained light for several minutes. The hosts shared stories about celebrity rumors they had personally experienced. Joy described a tabloid story that had been completely fabricated. Sunny talked about online criticism. Even Whoopi admitted that after years in television, she had learned not to read every comment. Then the discussion slowly shifted. Whoopi glanced down at her notes. Can I ask something a little deeper? The audience immediately grew quieter. Keanu nodded. Sure. Whoopi crossed her arms. You've been through things that most people don't survive emotionally. The room became noticeably still. No one interrupted. No one laughed. Whoopi continued carefully. You've experienced loss. You've experienced grief. You've experienced public pressure. And somehow people still describe you as peaceful. Keanu looked down briefly. Sometimes. Whoopi tilted her head. What keeps you going? The audience became completely silent. Keanu didn't answer immediately. The pause stretched longer than television audiences are used to. Sunny shifted slightly in her seat. Joy looked toward Whoopi. Even the audience seemed unsure whether the moment was over or just beginning. Finally, Keanu spoke. People. The answer surprised everyone. Whoopi nodded slowly. People. Yeah. He paused again. The people I love. The people I've met. Friends. Family. Strangers sometimes. Nobody interrupted. Keanu continued. I've had moments where life felt very heavy. The audience remained silent. And during those moments, somebody would do something small. What do you mean? Alyssa asked softly. Keanu smiled. A conversation. A kindness. Somebody checking on you. Somebody making you laugh when you didn't think you could. Several audience members nodded. Sunny leaned forward. So you're saying hope comes from other people? Sometimes. Whoopi looked intrigued. Only sometimes. Keanu smiled again. I think hope comes from connection. People are part of that. The audience applauded. For a moment the conversation seemed ready to move on. Then Joy Behar jumped in. But isn't that risky? Keanu looked toward her. How so? Relying on people. People disappoint you. Several audience members murmured agreement. Joy continued. They leave. They make mistakes. They hurt you. That's just reality. The room grew serious again. Keanu nodded. That's true. So why keep believing in people? The audience quieted once more. Keanu considered the question carefully. Because the alternative seems worse. A few audience members applauded immediately. Joy smiled. That's a pretty good answer. Whoopi was still watching him closely. She wasn't finished. There was something about the conversation that had captured her attention. She leaned forward. You know, that's interesting. Keanu waited. Whoopi continued. Because people always talk about your kindness. The audience applauded again. But I wonder if that's actually the wrong word. Keanu laughed softly. Oh, yeah. Whoopi pointed toward him. I don't think kindness is what people respond to. The panel looked curious. Sunny turned toward Whoopi. What do you mean? Whoopi paused. I think people respond because you seem disappointed in the world without becoming bitter. The audience reacted with a mix of applause and thoughtful silence. Keanu's smile faded slightly. Not in a negative way. More like someone recognizing a difficult truth. Whoopi noticed it immediately. And then she asked the question that changed the entire mood of the segment. When was the moment you decided not to become angry at the world? The studio went completely silent. No applause. No laughter. No reactions. Just silence. Keanu stared at the table. The hosts waited. The audience waited. For nearly 10 seconds, nobody said a word. And for the first time since he walked onto the stage, Keanu Reeves looked genuinely emotional. Whoopi's expression softened. The camera stayed on Keanu. Sunny glanced toward Joy. Alyssa sat perfectly still. The audience could feel something significant was about to happen. Keanu finally lifted his eyes. The room remained silent. And when he began to answer, nobody was prepared for what he was about to say. Keanu took a slow breath. The audience remained completely silent. You know, he began. I don't think there was one moment. Whoopi nodded. Keanu looked down briefly before continuing. I think anger showed up plenty of times. The honesty immediately caught everyone's attention. Sunny leaned forward. Really? Of course. Keanu smiled slightly. I'm human. A few audience members laughed softly. I've been angry. I've been frustrated. I've asked why certain things happened. The room stayed quiet. But eventually I realized those questions don't always have answers. Whoopi listened carefully. And that helped. Not immediately. The audience chuckled. Keanu laughed too. No, not at all. The tension eased slightly. But over time I started noticing something. Joy tilted her head. What? Keanu folded his hands. The people around me who stayed angry forever didn't seem happier because of it. The audience applauded. Sunny nodded slowly. That's true. Keanu continued. I understood why they were angry. Sometimes they had every reason to be. But carrying it every day seemed exhausting. Whoopi looked thoughtful. So what did you do with it? Keanu paused again. You carry it for a while. Then hopefully you learn when to put some of it down. The audience erupted into applause. Several people stood briefly. Whoopi smiled. That's probably one of the smartest things I've heard all week. The audience laughed. Joy pointed toward Keanu. See, this is why people like him. More laughter followed. The conversation appeared to have found its balance again. Then Sunny shifted the discussion. I think there's another side to this. Keanu nodded. Sunny continued. People see public figures and assume they're supposed to be role models. The audience murmured. But that's a lot of pressure. It can be, Keanu agreed. Sunny crossed her arms. Do you ever feel trapped by your reputation? The question caught the audience's attention. Keanu smiled slightly. What do you mean? Well, everyone expects you to be kind all the time. Joy immediately jumped in. Nobody expects that from me. The audience burst into laughter. Definitely not, Alyssa said. More laughter filled the studio. Even Whoopi laughed. Joy pointed at Alyssa. Thank you very much. The mood lightened. But Sunny returned to her question. I'm serious. If someone is known as the nice guy, do they get room to be human? The audience quieted again. Keanu considered it. I think that's fair. Sunny nodded. People expect perfection. Yeah, and nobody can actually live up to that. Keanu looked around the table. Nobody should have to. The audience applauded. Whoopi leaned back. That's a conversation we don't have enough. Sunny agreed. Exactly. She turned toward the audience. We build people up, and then we wait for them to disappoint us. The audience responded with a mixture of applause and agreement. Keanu listened carefully. Sunny continued. It's almost become entertainment. The room grew more serious. Joy nodded. Social media definitely made that worse. Much worse, Sunny replied. Whoopi looked toward Keanu. Have you noticed that changing over the years? Keanu answered immediately. Absolutely. How? He took a moment. I think people are quicker to judge now. The audience grew quiet and slower to forgive. Several audience members applauded. Whoopi nodded. That's true. Keanu continued. We all make mistakes. Sunny agreed. Every single person. But now mistakes can follow someone forever. The audience responded with more applause. Joy leaned forward. Okay, but there has to be accountability too. The discussion immediately shifted. The audience sensed disagreement. Sunny looked toward Joy. Of course. Joy continued. I don't think forgiveness means pretending something didn't happen. Nobody said that, Sunny replied. The first real tension of the segment began to emerge. Whoopi watched both of them carefully. Joy continued. I'm just saying we sometimes jump straight to forgiveness before responsibility. Sunny responded quickly. And sometimes we jump straight to punishment before understanding. The audience reacted with loud applause. Joy shook her head. Depends on the situation. It always depends on the situation. For the first time, the hosts were debating each other more than the guest. Keanu sat quietly, listening. Whoopi finally stepped in. Okay. The audience laughed. Whoopi smiled. We're doing what we always do. Joy laughed. Arguing. Exactly. More laughter followed. Whoopi turned back toward Keanu. Let me ask you this. Keanu nodded. If someone hurts you, what matters more? Accountability or forgiveness? The audience instantly became silent again. Sunny looked interested. Joy looked interested. Even the audience leaned forward. Keanu smiled. You're not asking easy questions today. The audience laughed. Whoopi shrugged. That's my job. Keanu sat quietly for several seconds. Then he answered. I don't think it's either or. Joy raised an eyebrow. No. Keanu continued. I think accountability without compassion becomes cruelty. The audience applauded immediately. And compassion without accountability becomes avoidance. The applause grew louder. Even Sunny nodded. Whoopi looked impressed. Joy smiled. That's actually a pretty good balance. Keanu shrugged modestly. It's something I'm still figuring out. The audience laughed. Then something unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up during a brief applause break. The crowd noticed immediately. Whoopi looked over. Yes. The woman appeared emotional. She smiled nervously. I'm sorry. Whoopi reassured her. It's okay. The woman looked directly at Keanu. I just wanted to say thank you. The studio became silent. Keanu looked surprised. The woman continued. A few years ago, I lost someone very important to me. The audience listened closely. And hearing you talk today reminded me of something I needed to hear. Keanu nodded respectfully. The woman wiped away tears. When you said you learned to put some of the anger down, I think I needed that. The room fell completely silent. Even Joy looked emotional. Sunny placed a hand against her chest. The audience applauded warmly. Keanu smiled gently. Thank you. The woman sat down. For a moment nobody spoke. The emotion in the room felt genuine. Whoopi finally broke the silence. Well, the audience laughed softly. Now I'm trying not to cry on television. More laughter followed. The mood became lighter again. But Whoopi still seemed to have something on her mind. She looked directly at Keanu. You know what strikes me? What? Whoopi paused. Everything you've talked about today comes back to one thing. Keanu listened. Choice. The audience became quiet again. Whoopi continued. You keep describing choices. Keanu nodded. Maybe. You choose compassion. You try. You choose forgiveness. Sometimes. You choose hope. Keanu smiled. On good days. The audience laughed. But Whoopi wasn't smiling anymore. She looked genuinely thoughtful. Then she asked another question that instantly changed the energy in the room. What about the days when you can't make that choice? The audience stopped laughing. The studio became silent once again. Keanu's expression changed. This time even more noticeably than before. And everyone watching could tell the conversation was about to go somewhere far deeper than anyone expected. The audience settled back into silence. Keanu looked at Whoopi for a moment before answering. I think those days matter too. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. The room felt focused in a way that live television rarely does. Keanu continued. There are days when you're tired. The audience listened carefully. There are days when you're overwhelmed. Days when you don't feel hopeful. Days when you're frustrated. Whoopi nodded. Exactly. And I think pretending those days don't exist creates its own problem. Several audience members applauded. Sunny agreed immediately. That's true. Keanu continued. If people only see the good days, they start believing they're failing when they have bad ones. The applause grew louder. Joy pointed toward him. That's a great point. Keanu smiled. We're all complicated. Whoopi leaned forward. So what do you do on those days? Keanu thought for a moment. Honestly, The audience laughed softly. Whoopi smiled. Yes, honestly. Sometimes I just get through the day. The audience applauded again. Sunny nodded. I appreciate that answer. Keanu continued. Not every day has to be some huge victory. Several audience members clapped. Sometimes success is just making it to tomorrow. The room erupted with applause. Even the hosts joined in. Whoopi looked impressed. People don't say that enough. Keanu shrugged. It's true. The conversation could have ended there. It would have been a perfectly satisfying television moment. But Joy suddenly shifted the discussion. Can I ask something controversial? The audience immediately laughed. Whoopi pointed toward Joy. That's usually how trouble starts. More laughter followed. Joy smiled. No, seriously. She turned toward Keanu. People admire humility. Keanu nodded. Okay, but sometimes I wonder if people use humility to avoid taking credit for what they've accomplished. The audience reacted with curiosity. Sunny looked intrigued. Whoopi folded her arms. Joy continued. You've had an incredible career. Keanu smiled politely. You've influenced millions of people. I've been lucky. There you go again. The audience laughed. Joy pointed directly at him. That's what I'm talking about. More laughter followed. Joy continued. At what point are you allowed to say, yeah, I worked hard. Yeah, I'm proud of what I've done. The audience applauded. Keanu laughed. That's fair. Well, he leaned back slightly. I am proud. The audience cheered. There we go. Joy shouted. More applause followed. Keanu smiled. I'm proud of the work. I'm proud of the people I've worked with. Whoopi nodded. That's different. How? Whoopi answered immediately. You're talking about gratitude, not ego. The audience applauded. Keanu smiled. Maybe. Sunny jumped in. I think that's why people connect with you. The discussion became more animated. Several hosts began talking at once. Whoopi laughed. One at a time. The audience laughed with her. Sunny continued. People trust authenticity. Joy agreed. Most of the time. Not all the time. No. Joy shook her head. Sometimes people only like authenticity when they agree with it. The audience reacted loudly. Whoopi immediately raised an eyebrow. Now that's true. The room became more serious. Sunny nodded. That's a conversation worth having. Joy continued. We tell public figures to be honest. Right. And then when they're honest, everybody gets angry. The audience laughed and applauded. Whoopi looked toward Keanu. Have you experienced that? Keanu thought carefully. Sure. What happened? He smiled. I survived. The audience erupted into laughter. Whoopi laughed too. Fair enough. But then Alyssa spoke up. She had been listening more than talking for much of the segment. There seems to be a bigger issue here. The audience quieted. What do you mean? Whoopi asked. Alyssa looked around the table. I think we're talking about whether people are allowed to grow. The room became silent again. Sunny nodded slowly. Joy looked thoughtful. Keanu listened carefully. Alyssa continued. We've all said things we regret. The audience applauded. We've all made mistakes. More applause followed. But it feels like society has become very uncomfortable with growth. Whoopi looked interested. Explain. Alyssa continued. If someone changes their mind, people accuse them of being fake. Sunny nodded. If they don't change, people accuse them of being stubborn. The audience laughed. Exactly. Alyssa smiled. So what are people supposed to do? The room filled with applause. Whoopi turned toward Keanu. That's actually a great question. Keanu nodded. It is. The audience waited. Keanu looked around the studio. I think growth is messy. Nobody interrupted. People want transformation to be clean. The audience listened closely. But it usually isn't. Several audience members applauded. You learn. More applause. You fail. More applause. You try again. The audience cheered. And hopefully you become a little better. Whoopi nodded slowly. Hopefully. For a moment everyone seemed to agree. Then Whoopi glanced down at one final note card. Her expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough for Sunny to notice. Oh no. The audience laughed. Whoopi smiled. What? Sunny pointed toward the card. Every time you look at a card like that, something happens. More laughter followed. Even Keanu laughed. Whoopi held up the card. I've been debating whether to ask this. The audience immediately became curious. Joy leaned forward. Now you have to ask it. Do I? Yes. The audience applauded. Whoopi looked toward Keanu. This is the last serious question. Keanu smiled. Okay. Whoopi paused. The room grew quiet. Then she spoke. There's a reason people respond to you the way they do. The audience listened. Not just because of your movies. Keanu remained silent. Not because of fame. The room stayed focused. Whoopi continued. I think people see someone who has experienced hardship without turning cynical. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Then she asked quietly, do you still believe most people are good? The studio fell completely silent. The audience stopped clapping. The host stopped moving. Even Joy didn't speak. It wasn't a political question. It wasn't a celebrity question. It was a human question. And everyone wanted to hear the answer. Keanu looked out toward the audience. Then toward the hosts. Then down at the table. Several seconds passed. The silence seemed to stretch across the entire studio. And when he finally looked back up, his expression was calm. But there was something powerful in his eyes. The audience sensed it immediately. Because whatever answer he was about to give wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't promotional. It wasn't the kind of response celebrities usually give on daytime television. And before he said a single word, the entire room was already hanging on every second. The studio remained silent. Keanu looked around the room one more time before answering. Yes. The audience didn't react immediately. It was such a simple answer that everyone seemed to wait for more. Keanu smiled slightly. Yes, I do. Whoopi nodded. Why? Keanu folded his hands. Because I've seen it. The audience listened carefully. I've seen people help strangers when nobody was watching. A few audience members nodded. I've seen people give their time, their energy, and their kindness without expecting anything back. The room stayed quiet. I've seen people show up for each other during the worst moments imaginable. Several audience members began applauding softly. Keanu continued. Are there selfish people? Absolutely. Are there cruel people? Of course. The audience remained focused. But if you only focus on that, eventually that's all you'll see. The applause began to grow. Keanu looked toward the audience. I think most people are trying. The room erupted into applause. Some audience members stood. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Whoopi smiled. Sunny nodded. Joy sat back in her chair and shook her head. In a good way, she added quickly as the audience laughed. Keanu laughed too. Whoopi waited for the applause to settle. Then she spoke quietly. You know what's interesting? The audience gradually became silent again. We spend so much time talking about what's wrong with the world. Several audience members nodded. But maybe we don't spend enough time talking about what's right with it. The audience applauded loudly. Sunny jumped in. I think people needed to hear that. Especially lately, Alyssa added. The audience agreed. Joy looked toward Keanu. Well, congratulations. Keanu laughed. For what? You somehow got us through an entire serious conversation without anybody storming off stage. The audience exploded with laughter. Whoopi pointed at Joy. There's still time. More laughter followed. The tension that had built throughout the segment finally gave way to a sense of relief. The conversation became lighter. The hosts joked with one another. The audience relaxed. But there was also a feeling that something meaningful had happened. Not because of an argument. Not because of a dramatic confrontation. But because everyone had paused long enough to have a genuine conversation. As the segment wrapped up, Whoopi turned toward Keanu one final time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. The audience applauded again. Whoopi smiled. And thank you for answering the questions. Keanu laughed. Even the difficult ones. Especially the difficult ones. The audience cheered. The show's music began playing softly. The hosts waved. The audience stood and applauded. And just like that, the interview came to an end. But the conversation didn't end there. Within minutes of the episode airing, clips from the discussion began spreading across social media. Viewers shared Keanu's comments about anger. Others posted his thoughts about forgiveness and accountability. Thousands of people highlighted his statement that sometimes success is just making it to tomorrow. Many viewers called it one of the most honest moments they'd seen on daytime television in years. Some praised Whoopi for asking thoughtful questions. Others applauded the entire panel for allowing the conversation to breathe without constantly interrupting. Fans posted clips, quotes, and reactions throughout the day. Comment sections filled with people sharing their own experiences. Many viewers said the discussion felt different from the usual celebrity interview. More personal, more authentic, more human. News and entertainment pages picked up clips from the segment. Online discussions continued well into the evening. Even people who disagreed with certain points admitted the conversation felt genuine. Behind the scenes, according to audience members who later shared their experiences online, the atmosphere after the show remained surprisingly emotional. Several audience members stayed in their seats for a few extra moments. Others continued discussing the interview as they left the studio. Members of the production team reportedly thanked Keanu for his openness. The hosts exchanged hugs and final conversations before heading off to their next commitments. And while television moves quickly from one story to another, this was one of those rare moments viewers continued talking about long after the cameras stopped rolling. Not because someone won an argument, not because someone was embarrassed, not because of a shocking controversy, but because a simple question led to an honest answer. And sometimes those are the moments people remember most. What do you think about Keanu Reeves' response? Do you agree that most people are good, or do you see things differently? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.